Is your work bestie your ride or die, or a fake friend waiting for an opportunity to throw you under a bus so that they can get ahead? So many of my clients have been burned, and I want you to avoid the drama and agony a work frenemy brings. So in today's video, I am sharing the 5 signs your coworker is not your friend. My client, we'll call her Sophia, had just started a new job, and she was nervous about it. She was excited to start, but she knew she had to learn new tools, processes, and most importantly, get to know a whole new team. And simply remembering everyone's names on the first day was daunting. So she felt an immense sense of relief when one of her new coworkers, let's call her Sarah, reached out to her and asked her to lunch on her first day. Sarah was so welcoming. She gave her the lay of the land and helped her with her new colleagues' names. She even spilled some tea about each of them. As Sophia got settled into her new job, Sarah quickly became Sophia's work bestie. She was always there to offer help, suggestions, and they even got to know each other beyond work. Honestly, Sophia thought her friendship with Sarah was one of the best things about her new job. Months later, Sophia was fully settled into her new job, and it was going really well, except for this one coworker who was incredibly difficult to deal with. This coworker regularly obstructed Sophia's work and gatekept information. Unfortunately, they worked closely together, so she couldn't avoid them. Sarah knew better than to broadcast the problem to everyone, but she did confide in Sarah. After all, Sarah was her work bestie. She trusted her, and she considered her to be a good friend. While Sarah never commiserated about this difficult coworker, she always reassured Sophia and validated her frustrations. Having a sounding board was a huge relief to Sophia. Sometimes you just need to vent about your difficult coworker, right? If you've experienced this before, you know exactly where this is going. Because one day, her difficult coworker blew up at her. Turns out, Sarah wasn't keeping anything confidential, and not only had she gossiped about how much Sophia disliked this person, she twisted it to make her sound unreasonable. And word, of course, had gotten back to that person. At the time, Sophia was blindsided, but once she learned the signs of a fake friend at work, it was really obvious. Sarah came on so strong. Her friendliness quickly established trust with Sophia. Her interest in Sophia built rapport, and the tea spilling felt more like yapping with a friend than a setup. But the closeness Sarah created was contrived, and when Sophia looked back, she realized that it was one-sided. Sarah knew way more about her life than Sophia knew about hers. A coworker who comes on strong may be a friendly coworker who really will become your work bestie, or it can be a strategy for them to wield against you. But telling these two apart is really hard. However, the second sign makes it way easier to discern. In Sophia's situation, this would have helped her spot Sarah as a frenemy at work. Remember how I mentioned Sarah regularly checked in with Sophia about how work was going? Well, because Sarah was such a friendly, supportive friend at work, she was the first person that Sophia would reach out to if she had any questions or she had a stuck point. It wasn't ever over anything major. Sophia was very good at her job and she didn't need any help there. Most of the questions were just about process or just tips on dealing with a specific coworker's personality. Sarah was always generous with her time, and Sophia really appreciated it. But she noticed that sometimes when Sarah offered a little bit of input, she would take a lot of the credit. Like, there was this one project that Sarah had answered a couple of process questions on. Sophia wouldn't want to undermine the value of Sarah's support in general at work, but Sophia did all the work, and 99% of it without any input or questions. But Sarah did overstate it when that project was getting praise from the higher-ups. When the project was recognized, Sarah communicated to their boss and their boss's boss that she had had input and effort on the most strategic aspects, and low-key made it sound like Sophia was struggling without her. You know, because she's new. Sophia was shocked when Sarah did this. Part of her wanted to brush it off, but Sarah did help her, and it's not that she didn't want Sarah to get any credit, but it felt like her impact was being undermined by what Sarah was doing. Because it was. Since they were close over their next lunch, which they took together every day at this point, Sophia subtly confronted Sarah about it. She assumed that Sarah didn't realize what she was doing and that she would apologize and set the record straight. But of course, that wasn't what happened. Instead, Sarah flipped it on Sophia, accusing her of hogging the spotlight and not appreciating everything that she's doing for her. You know, classic gaslighting. While Sophia was the one wronged, Sarah was acting as if she was the one being betrayed. So Sophia apologized and she dropped it. She was honestly really confused. And it's not just that. Fake friends at work have a way of inserting themselves in everything. just like Sarah did. But Sophia could have had it so much worse. I've had clients who have been in similar dynamics where their friend at work stepped in to hijack high visibility projects and even threw them under the bus in the process. They end up being downrated and even being written up and terminated for underperformance while their work frenemy is getting praise for their work. I think the hardest part in the situation is that the fake friend has set up a dynamic where you really care about the friendship, so they can get away with more. Like Sophia was so concerned about offending Sarah and potentially falling out with her that Sarah was able to continue taking credit and inserting herself in Sophia's work when it served her. This did a number on Sophia because she started questioning her reality and even her own competence at work. And the impact of that lasted way longer than her time working with Sarah, which we need to sidetrack quickly to talk about the damage that a fake friend at work can do. In Sophia's case, Sarah undermined her, put her in the middle of toxic office politics, and created a deep distrust in other people at work. If Sophia hadn't have come to me, the negative effects of having a frenemy at work could still be costing her opportunities, confidence, and even a sense of safety at work. Most people who have these toxic work experiences have no idea how they continue to impact their lives long after they leave the job. Even if your frenemy at work didn't make the job toxic per se, you could still be dealing with post-toxic job syndrome from the toxic dynamic that they created. Being betrayed by a frenemy at work can stop you from trusting your coworkers, prevent you from building mutually rewarding relationships at work, and even simply stop you from liking your job. If you have had a fake friend at work, you need to know if they're haunting you. That's why I created a free assessment to find out at toxicjobquiz.com. Now, I have to come back to something because it is probably the most obvious sign that your coworker is not your friend, but it's also a sign that most people miss until it's way too late. In retrospect, Sophia experienced this with Sarah. From day one spilling tea about coworkers, Sarah was always in the drama. She wasn't always involved in it directly, but she always knew what was going on with everyone. Sophia thought she was spilling tea to her because they were friends. What she didn't realize was Sarah was spilling that tea everywhere. Of course, Sarah created a ton of drama for Sophia when she made sure that their difficult coworker got word of everything that Sophia had said about them. This created division and distrust not just with that coworker, who became even more difficult to work with for obvious reasons, but for Sophia with the rest of the team. Once her coworkers knew she was talking about that difficult coworker behind their backs, they felt like maybe she was saying things about them too. And you can bet your bottom dollar that Sarah stoked those fears. Like, Sarah was definitely the type that if any coworker asked if Sophia said anything about them, she would 1000% insinuate that Sophia was saying all sorts of things. Hindsight is always 20/20, and when Sophia was unpacking her toxic job baggage from the experience that she had with Sarah, she realized that Sarah had a pattern of being in the center of drama at work. Fake friends often are the arbiters of drama. I've worked with a few frenemies like this myself, and I always spotted them quickly by noticing the people who always seem to know what's going on with everyone else, like about their personal lives in particular, and are not afraid to talk about it. The gossip is always negative and toxic. Fake friends at work frequently front concern for others when they're collecting and distributing gossip, like Sarah did to Sophia. They're frequently the one at the center of the drama because they're the transmitters. They're the ones telling the colleague what you said about them, or spilling tea about a personal matter that you told them about in confidence. What gives me the biggest ick is when someone like Sarah stirs up drama, but then pretends to be trying to help you when you're the target of their gossip. Which brings me to the next sign that your friend at work is fake. And I think this one is one of the most frustrating ones because it serves serious high school vibes. Sarah experienced this with Sophia without even realizing it. The thing is, it did a massive number on her confidence at work and her self-esteem. She saw a glimpse of it when Sarah overstated her work on that project that I mentioned earlier, but it was also a toxic casual behavior. Sarah constantly made backhanded compliments to Sophia. If Sophia ran an idea by Sarah, Sarah would remark on the effort, but then subtly create a whole bunch of doubt about whether or not the idea was viable. Sophia later found out that Sarah would then steal those same ideas behind her back, of course. The backhanded comments were so subtle that when Sophia was unpacking her experience with Sarah, she actually had a hard hard time putting a finger on a lot of them. Like, was Sarah actually complimenting Sophia on her outfit that day? Or was she making fun of her? Or was she implying that she usually looked disheveled because she said she looked polished? The worst part was that because these backhanded comments were coming from her friend, Sophia started to doubt herself in all sorts of ways. She felt self-conscious about her appearance at work. She hesitated to speak up in meetings. She started handing out credit for work she did because Sarah had gaslit her so much, and ironically, she was afraid of taking credit for someone else's work. But there was a few times where Sarah really was being nice and complimentary without being secretly nasty, which brings us to the fifth sign that your coworker is not your friend. There were certain times where Sarah would be extremely kind and complimentary, not just to Sophia, but to her coworkers. Aside from when she was trying to pry into their personal lives, of course. Sophia noticed this pattern pretty quickly after she started the job. Sarah was nicest when she needed something. When she needed input or help from a coworker, she would lay it on thick. When she needed something from Sophia, she would praise her talent and her intelligence, and Sophia would do anything to help. It also didn't hurt that Sarah was so helpful to her in an effort to take credit for the work, as we discussed. Sarah knew that she would get the most bees with honey. The thing is, while this is a tool that a frenemy at work will use, it's also a strategy that you can use to deal with them, or any other difficult coworker for that matter. Which, now you know how to spot them, you need to know how to deal with them so that you don't end up getting screwed over like Sophia. So go watch this video next, where I'm going to tell you exactly how to deal with them.